Do you know how well the U.S. emergency preparedness and response system works? The answer is not as well as anyone would think. Hurricane Katrina proved that. The coronavirus pandemic proved that. And now Trump is trying to prove that again for the second time in his own special way. See, the U.S. has this interesting system in which states and territories are supposed to handle emergency preparedness and response. And the federal government is supposed to backstop that with moolah and assistance. When the system is managed competently, it can work startlingly well. I lived in Los Angeles during the Northridge earthquake of 1994. That earthquake toppled one of the most heavily traveled freeways in the U.S. It was shocking to see. The betting odds were that it would take forever to finish a massive rebuilding project like fixing the 10 freeway. Instead, state, local, and federal governments laid out what seemed like an optimistically aggressive timeline. And damn if they didn't beat it. My jaw dropped and my admiration swelled. That was under President Clinton and Pete Wilson, Democrat and Republican. The system worked. It still could. But while the states, by and large, understand what they need, the federal government, especially under Trump, doesn't give a crap. It doesn't know, it doesn't care, it doesn't have a handle on things, and responses are patchwork rather than coordinated. It's not just that Trump doesn't want to invest in emergency preparation and recovery, although he doesn't. In fact, he wants to abolish the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, altogether. FEMA, as you may know, is part of the Department of Homeland Security. The DHS under Trump has a strict policy of not being prepared for anything except panic when Trump gets real mad at one of his appointees shortly before ousting them. So FEMA still exists because ICE still exists, which means every high-ranking official that works for DHS is busy ducking for cover and lying, sometimes simultaneously. No time to get rid of FEMA while you're busy dodging bullets from the commander-in-chief. So while FEMA still accidentally exists, Trump denies disaster requests from the states that experience true emergencies, even when the disasters are major disasters, especially if those disasters take place in states with Democratic governors. The states with Democratic governors are usually the richer states, but they're screwed because they are being denied federal aid, whereas the states with Republican governors are generally comparatively poor. And those states are screwed because even if they get something from FEMA, it doesn't compensate for their relative poverty. So you could say that Trump has struck a blow for national equality by making sure that things suck for everybody. Yay to not responding to disasters. Is this not responding to disasters some sort of symbolic synchronicity in which the nation does not respond to the disaster that is Trump? Well, of course it is. Being the richest country in the history of the world doesn't mean much if you don't respond to disasters. Per Politico, here is a typical Democratic response to the Trump administration. Senator Patty Murray of Washington, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, said, "Never in my lifetime has a president treated disaster relief as a political cudgel." Never in your lifetime, eh, Patty? How about never in anyone's lifetime? How about that? You just keep right on being surprised while the United States of America collapses. Do you think you can pull that off, top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee? Democratic states are somewhat resilient in spite of Trump, but Republican states better hope they are too. It takes Trump about 80 days on average to respond to a disaster request from a Democratic-led state, more than 2 months. But it takes him 39 days on average to respond to a disaster request from a Republican-led state. That's half what it takes for a Democratic-led state. But it's still 39 days. How's that for a timely response to an emergency? Back when Bush the first was president, in the pre-technology days, he was able to respond to disaster requests in 10 to 15 days, at least 4 times faster. Maybe that's what you get when you elect a president who favors fossil fuels because he actually is a fossil. Maybe when you elect someone from the Ice Age, you're going to get a glacial pace of responses to disaster requests. But here's what you really get. The U.S. already has higher death rates for every leading cause of death than any comparable nation, especially preventable deaths. The United States already lost more people per capita during the pandemic than any other Western nation. Now we are setting ourselves up to lose more of our own citizens to emergencies and natural disasters than any other developed nation, especially if Trump succeeds in cutting or eliminating federal spending on disaster response the way he wants to. Sometimes it's just ridiculous hyperbole to shout, "We're all going to die." But these days, more and more, not so much.